Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am in the house. One of the questions I get a lot whenever I'm playing records in Dolby Atmos in this Atmos room is, how do you know where to place sound in the room to create that perfect immersive experience? So today I'm going to do the Dolby Atmos mix breakdown for Berri, Tiga and Tekno's Ego Piano. I'm going to show you where and how I place sounds in the room and try as much as possible to explain why. Alright, it's very simple. Sweet beats. All right, it's very simple, trust me. Okay, like I mentioned before in my video on how to get started with Dolby Atmos mixing and mastering, Logic has its own Dolby Atmos renderer that comes native with Logic, but I prefer to use the Dolby Atmos renderer from Dolby Labs. And if you decide to use the Dolby Atmos renderer from Dolby Labs, there are 4 things you need to do before you can begin the Dolby Atmos mix. So I'm going to show you that real quick. The Dolby Atmos renderer installation comes with 2 Dolby Atmos mix templates, the Dolby Atmos panel, your LTC generator, and your binaural settings. More on that later, but let me show you how you would start a Dolby Atmos mix from scratch using the Dolby Atmos renderer. So the first thing you want to do is open a new project from template, and under my template you can see the 2 Dolby Atmos mix templates. There's one for 64 channels, there's another one for the 128 channels. Personally, I always use the 128 channel because I always end up almost maxing out these 128 channels all the time when I do a Dolby Atmos mix. Okay, let's assume I want to start a mix from scratch, so I'll select this. So now that you've selected the template, the next thing you want to do, which is very important, is set Logic's input and output device to the Dolby audio bridge. And after you've done that, the third thing you're going to do is pull up your mixer and go to the LTC channel. It's usually at the very end of the mixer, and load the Dolby Atmos binaural settings. If this is your first time doing this, it will be under Dolby Laboratories, and then you see the Dolby Atmos binaural settings, mono. You select that, and now you have your binaural settings. I'm going to talk more on my settings much later in the video, but I just want to show you what you need to do to set up your Dolby Atmos mix session. So now once you've done this, the 4th and final thing you need to do before you begin your mix is make sure your LTC is connected to the Dolby renderer. If this was your first time working with the Dolby renderer, this would not be activated, right? So you come and click this to sync your transport to the LTC. Basically, this ensures that your time code is in sync with the renderer. So if it's 1 minute in Logic, it's 1 minute on the renderer. And you go to source, you select input. If you don't have a Dolby Atmos setup, you would be doing your Dolby Atmos mix in the binaural monitoring format, right? In that case, you want to make sure you go to preferences and set your output to headphone only, and then you can go ahead and do your mix with just your headphones. Okay, but I would not be doing that today because I have a Dolby Atmos setup. Okay, so let's go back to Logic. So those are the 4 things you need to do before you begin your Dolby Atmos mix in Logic using the Dolby Atmos renderer from Dolby Labs. All right, I hope that is clear, because in my last video somebody came and was crying about I didn't mention everything correctly. So I've done that now. So I'm going to try as much as possible to point out most of the things that I've done here, which I think will guide your process if you're trying to mix in Dolby Atmos. Obviously I can't go through every single track, that would take hours and hours, but I would jump right into some of the very important things, because at the end of the day the principle is the same, right? It's like just replicating for different tracks and just trying to make everything work. But you understand what I'm saying as we go along. So when I'm doing a Dolby Atmos mix, I like to picture my left, center and right channels as the foundation of the mix. What I mean by that is that's where I'll place the main instruments, like the kick, the snare, you know, maybe like the main pads, right? Then I would extend the rest of the sounds to the room to create that very nice immersive experience. And this is also because most of the files I work with, they are stereo master files, so they come in here as stereo files, except I decide to collapse it into mono and place it in just one particular position, which is very possible, and I do that sometimes for specific instruments that I just want to just occupy or play from one specific position in the room. So let's start with the kick. By the way, I'm using Logic's surround panel. This is also what happens when you're using the Dolby renderer and Logic. You get to use Logic's surround panel to send signals or sound or output to the bed channels, and then use the Dolby Atmos panel to send sounds to the object channels. So if you look at the surround panel, you can see that I've set the kick to play from the left and the right channels, but I also have the option of, you know, collapsing the kick down and just let it play from the center channels. But I prefer to just always leave my kick playing from the left and the right channels. And then we have the shaker loop. Right, so I'm using the Dolby Atmos panel this time around because I've sent this to an object channel. With object channels, you can place sound anywhere in the room without limitations. While with bed channels, you are mostly placing sound at speaker positions. I mean, you can still place sound in between speaker positions or spread it, but object channels just has no limit. You can just literally place sound anywhere in the room. As you can see, I have my shaker playing just a little bit closer or a little bit away from, you know, the left and the right channels. So which means I'm going to be getting output or sound coming from the left, center, right, and just a little bit going to the right surround and the left surround. If I move this, so now it's closer to me. If I took it to the back, you can hear it's playing from the back surround channels basically, or the back of the room, right? But yeah, for this song, I've just placed it here. And then let me look at some other sounds real quick and let's see. Yeah, see this loop. Now this loop is a very full loop. It has a lot of percussions and stuff, and I decided to place them right in the front of the room. Again, forming the foundation. Like I said, the main sounds, the main loops, I'm going to place them at the front of the room. Yeah, this is another loop, but this time around I've placed this one at the middle of the room, right? So it's coming from my left side surround and right side surround. I think another thing I try to do is try as much as possible to place the sound in the room where every sound has its own space. Let's see, what do we have here? Let's see. Right, so this is the rim sound, and I've also placed this in the middle of the room, but I've just brought it, you know, away from the left and the right just a little bit. Again, I'm just making sure each sound has its own space in the room. So the song is very dope. You can hear that this tom is at my left side, but I've also brought it towards the center of the room. This tom was already panned right from the stereo mix, but what I did here is just bring it closer towards the center of the room. Again, making sure every sound has its own space while using the center, left, and the right channels as like the foundation, and just let everything else grow out of that. So let's go. It's crazy when you close your eye, you can literally feel the sound closer to you. Anyways, you can see that I've brought this bell sound towards the center of the room as well. Let's look at it on the renderer. Right. So you can literally hear and feel like the sound is just here. just as it is there on the renderer, right? Again, I don't want to go through all of the sounds because yeah, we'll be here all day, man. I just want to make this video as short as possible. Yeah. I like the position of the snare. I placed it in the front of the room, right? But I've also raised it, so it's like up to like 50%. So that's like it's almost like the snare is playing above my head. Let's look at the renderer. You can literally hear and feel like the snare is above you. Mad. So again, filling out the spaces around my foundation, right? Yeah, I brought the impact sound closer to the center of the room. I like to put impact sound like close to the middle of the room sometimes. Sometimes I would actually even place the impact sound like dead center in the middle of the room and maybe above your head. So it feels like the sound is just raining down on you. It's actually quite mad. Let me see what I did with this roll. Yeah, I kept the roll in front. To be honest, most of the decision on where to place sound is based on personal preference. All right. So what I'm doing with the riser is raise the riser in the room, right? So it feels like, you know, it's a riser. It's a reason. It's somewhere above me. And I've also automated it to go forward, right? So here. Right. You can see that in the render, how it's moving. You know, I think that sounded fun for this record. Sometimes I will let it start from the front channels, automate it to rise to the height channels and also go back. Or sometimes I'll let it rise from the center of the room to the height channels, you know, just to create a sense of something rising. You know, that's another way I like to interpret sound. I like to interpret them based on what their natural movement is like, or how they expect it to sound. You expect a riser to kind of rise, so it just makes sense to make a riser rise in the Dolby Atmos mix, right? But this is just my opinion, my personal preference, and how I've decided to interpret these sounds. You might think differently in your own process, because at the end of the day, the idea is to be as creative as possible. But based on my experience, if you're using the center, left, and right channels as your foundation, and then grow your sound from there, then you'll be good. There's also something I'm doing with my kick. When you mix in Dolby Atmos, you have an LFE channel, which is your dedicated bass or your sub bass channel. This is how I choose to work with an LFE channel. I create an LFE bus, and now everything I send to the LFE bus is what is going to go to my LFE channels, because I'm going to route the LFE bus to my LFE channel. But I also use a single band EQ to do like a high cut, right, or high pass filter, and then I'm making sure that everything above 100 hertz is cut off. So the sounds that are going to be going to my LFE channel are just frequencies below 100 hertz. Once I've done that, then I'm going to send a copy of my kick to the LFE bus. I also do the same thing with my sub bass and any other bass tracks or any other bass heavy instruments in the mix, right? And then I will just use the fader to blend the LFE into the mix. So that way I have a good amount of dedicated bass going to the sub channel, but also have bass playing from all of the other monitors in my system. I mean, in case your song is played in a place where there's no sub bass, you're still guaranteed to have bass. Do you understand? It's not like all your bass was sent to your LFE, and now when there's no sub in the system, you know, they don't hear your sub, all right? So let's look at the sub bass real quick. Right. So like I said, a copy to my LFE. If I solo the LFE now, so this is my sub channel. So right now, this is all that's going to my sub. Yeah, you can hear the deep sub from the bass and the kick. That's all that's going to my sub channel, and that's what you're going to be hearing from my sub. I also prefer to place the bass in the front of the room, left on the right channel, or sometimes I collapse it to the middle and let it play from the center channel, right? Sometimes I will bring it closer to me, right? But I still make sure most of the sound is coming from the left, center, and right channel. Okay, so this is like a synth bass. I brought it to the center of the room and it sounded good. You can see on the renderer. What else do we have here? We have a pad. So I place the pad towards the front of the room, and then what do we have here? Yeah. So this particular pad I've sent to the back of the room, just behind my ears. You can actually hear it. It's crazy, man. Let me slow down. You can literally hear it at the back of my ear. Or if your ear, hope you're listening with headphones, because if you listen with headphones, then you will hear all of these things correctly. That's dope. What else do we have here? Yeah, so this one I've set to automate, you know, from the front of the room, I guess, to the middle of the room. Yeah, to the middle of the room. This is another very nice feature I like about the Dolby renderer. It has the sequencer feature, and then you can like drop a sequence of how you want the sound to move in the room. So if I go to my edit, you can see here that I've set the sound to move from the front of the room just to the middle of the room, and then you can set the speed here if you go to step duration, and it's very, very dope. Let's look at the render and see how it's moving in the room. So that's it basically. It's so dope. I personally enjoy making sound move in the room. I feel like when sounds are moving, they tend to feel more alive, you know, and that's just my opinion, but it just sounds good to me. And then what else do we have here? There's the E piano. Okay, this one is just right in the center of the room. Remember what I said? Main sound. Like, you're going to be the one to have to decide what you want to use as your lead sounds. For me, that E piano is one of the sounds I consider to be like the main sound holding the records together, and I've placed it in the front of the room. Yo, I think I did something with this one. Let's see. Okay, no, this one I just brought it in the middle of the room, just a little bit closer. Let me see what I did with this flute. Yeah, this one is just right in the front of the room. You know, again, you choose, you decide. Let me see where I place these guitars. So like in the front of the room. I think there's some other fun stuff I did. Oh, let's listen to this guy. That's so nice. I placed the guitar, as you can hear, behind me, right behind me in the room. Let's listen to the other one. Nice. So you see what I'm doing here is I have one guitar playing in front of me and another one playing behind me. Just kind of creates this nice enveloped feeling, right? So when you're listening to this song, it just feels like you are actually surrounded by two amazing guitarists when you get to this point. You know, it just, again, just use your imagination. Let's look at where I placed the log drums. Right. So I have the first log drum playing from the center channel, right? Right. The second one, let's look at the second one. Front, left, and right channel. And then the third one, the same, left and right channels as well. That's forming like a very nice triangle there. So dope. This is so much fun, I'm not even gonna lie. There's one last thing here. Let's check this out. Look at the bells. See? Like I said, when you move sounds like this, they just feel more alive. What I'm doing here is I've obviously automated the sound to move from the front of the room to the back of the room. Like you literally feel the sound massaging your head, and I've raised it to the height channels, so they're very, very high up, and then it's just traveling down the length of the room. You know, just creates a very nice euphoric feeling.